Thank you so much, Michelle and Tom. And I just got to say, we're two panels into the day, the afternoon, and the first one I thought was incredibly important in terms of understanding what we are facing in the immigration debate. And I think the second panel with Michelle Hackman from the Wall Street Journal and Tom Linebarger from Cummins, which is just a remarkable company, and for all the things they do, really gives us a sense of what we need to do moving ahead and why immigration reform is really so important to communities across the country, but also our economy. So now we're joined by two of our closest partners and two really good friends. Portia Wu, who is the Managing Director of U.S. Public Policy at Microsoft, and then Chandler Morse, Director of U.S. Public Policy at Workday. And Chandler, somehow or another, we talked him into also being a National Immigration Forum member of the board. So Portia, don't worry, we're not going to make that same ask in front of you right now, but we might come back. So we've got a few minutes to kind of reflect back on this conversation, but really from your respective positions, speak to the different issues within the immigration debate, what we need to be doing in terms of, and thinking about in terms of improving our legal immigration system, but then finally, how we also might be thinking about the immigration system and kind of legal immigration, the case we want to be making in a different way. So let's start with the question around DACA. Tom and Michelle talked about the advocacy that Cummins has been doing around DACA, or even more broadly, protecting Dreamers at large. So I was wondering if both of you could speak to the importance of passing legislation to protect Dreamers, but then also what your respective companies are doing to engage in that advocacy. But also, I know for both of you, you have members of your workforces who are DACA recipients. So Portia, let me turn to you first.
Well, thanks, Ali, and thanks to the forum for this important convening. Hope we can be in person together next year. I want to say on DACA, first of all, it's incredibly important to Microsoft. We actually were the only company that sued the Department of Homeland Security when they terminated the program, saying it was unlawful. Of course, we were working with many other groups, but we felt that way because we have many colleagues who are Dreamers themselves, and we recognize the important contributions they're making to our country and economy. We were very gratified, actually, that we won that case at the DC District Court, and that was actually the case and the reasoning that was upheld at the Supreme Court. So it's preserved the program for the time being, but of course we recognize there's a lot of legislative uncertainty and we need to find a path forward. You probably can't see them, they're very tiny, but that picture behind me is a picture of me with several dozen Dreamers, both from Microsoft and LinkedIn and from other folks working in New York City, ringing the opening bell of the NASDAQ. And that was a day, and it was amazing to see on Times Square, this giant sign saying NASDAQ welcomes Dreamers. But I think that shows how, as the CEO of Cummins was also discussing, immigrants really contribute across our economy, and we really can't lose that valuable contribution right now.
I think, first of all, I'm not wearing a hat, but taking my hat off to Microsoft and their, sort of best in class advocacy when it comes to DACA. You set the tone for how a corporate entity can really lean into a public policy issue and the issues better for it completely. So I really have enjoyed working with the forum. I've enjoyed working with Microsoft. Workday, for those that don't know, we're a leading provider of enterprise cloud applications, financial management, HR services. Our services have been adopted by thousands of organizations, medium-sized businesses around the world, including about half of the Fortune 500. We really seek to hire and develop a diverse workforce and cultivate an employee-first culture and value inclusion, belonging, and equity, or what we refer to as VIBE. So in support of that VIBE effort, we've really consistently urged Congress to pass legislation that provides DACA recipients and Dreamers a permanent legal ability to live and work in the U.S., as well as a pathway to citizenship. We endorsed the DREAM Act when it was reintroduced this Congress and the Senate, and we're leaned in on the House side to try to expand that bipartisan vote. Green shoots there, but we'll take the victory all the same. So we've really been supportive of amicus in the process that Microsoft's been paving the way on, and just working hard to see what we can do. My background, I was with Senator Flake during the 2013 Kit's comments were sort of like, we'll do it next year, and I was like, yep, I I told people that. I absolutely said that. So part of what we can do is leverage those GOP contacts on that side from that experience, which is what we try to bring to bear.
So, and I mean, as everybody knows, DACA recipients, farm workers, and TPS recipients have been part of the mix around the reconciliation package. And, it's hard to tell exactly right now exactly what's going to make it through finally. But I know for us, on our part as the forum, we do see reconciliation as a path to protection for, DACA recipients and others. So, what that looks like in the future, the future of this particular package remains to be seen. But if that doesn't happen, we've got to work to kind of create these bipartisan opportunities, especially since in the House we saw the American Dream and Promise Act pass, as well as the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. So there are multiple paths that we're all kind of pursuing here. So along those lines, one of the paths that is incredibly important is really increasing or streamlining legal immigration. In fact, later this afternoon, I'm interviewing Director Urjadu of USCIS. So I was wondering, from both of your perspectives, kind of speaking to the legal immigration questions in front of us from a policy perspective, and what are the things that the administration could be doing, but also what are the things that Congress should be paying attention to in terms of legal immigration. So Portia, let's turn to you first again.
Thanks. Well, I think we have to recognize our legal immigration system wasn't functioning that well beforehand. And then, it was kind of like a rickety old shack. And then COVID came along and was sort of this giant asteroid that hit that shack. So we really don't have a functioning structure. And, I want to credit the folks at Department of Homeland Security and State for trying to do the best they could in a very bad situation. But the fact of the matter is, the pie was already too small. We were working with numbers that were set in 1990, so over 30 years ago. Our economy has radically changed since then, especially from a technology perspective. We're using tech talent across our economy, yet numbers haven't increased. We have a system that sets the number of individuals who can come based on country of birth at the same number, regardless of whether you're from India or Liechtenstein, not to pick on Liechtenstein, but they're small. So, we know these things didn't work. And then we aren't even able to use the visas that were allocated by law by Congress over the last 2 years, both on the family-based side and the employment-based side. Everyone's been harmed just because of COVID shutdowns, consular processing, other difficulties, and, people couldn't show up to get various documents in different people's hands. So I think we're really hoping that there might be a way to tackle these issues, not only to try to recoup the visas that were most recently lost in a way that benefits both family and employment-based immigration, but also we need to grow that pie. Like, we can't continue to be mystified at how we can't meet some of the labor market demands in our country and our economy when, I have the wrong metaphor here, but we're like not opening the spigot, where we're like, why are we like holding this little dish and only getting drops of water? It's because we're refusing to open the spigot. So, and I know that's going to take action, legislative action, but it feels like there should be bipartisan momentum to do such a thing. Chandler?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, even with the spigot analogy. Putting my back when I was on the Hill, in 2013, we took a stab at modernizing the legal immigration system, and even had that bill been passed and signed into law, it probably would be outdated now, given the circumstances. We've locked in this system that is not responsive and doesn't really meet the needs of the U.S. economy. I mean, it tends to be sort of, from where I sit, we talk about the employment-based recapture, but it's also family recapture. It's on both sides of those numbers to try to just use the numbers that were allocated. Again, that's kind of it's a bit of a taking care of a symptom of the problem, even, and really in that clarifying or taking care of that symptom, we should be able to find some common ground there. Again, those visas were awarded, were allocated by Congress, and then we need to get to the sort of place of, okay, now let's look at how we modernize the entire legal system. I'm a big fan. Again, comprehensive. We tried it. I'm a big fan of trying to get to yes where we can get to yes. Trying to. There's an entire generation of lawmakers on the Hill that are not really that familiar with voting on immigration provisions. large or small. And so, we've all been sort of pointing at some of these things and saying, like, let's get done what we can get done. And then everyone will see that the world doesn't fall apart. Like, elections often aren't made tougher. Like we can take care of some of these problems without feeling like we're, trying to solve everything all at once.
Oh, wait, I'll say something else before you.
Yeah, please.
I think, we sometimes talk about family-based and employment-based because that's the way the law is structured and those are the words in the law. But I do want to underscore, like, families are working and contributing to our economy. And of course, for our employees, like we have colleagues who have been stuck in the green card backlog for like 10, 15 years. And for them, it's a huge impact, not just for them, but for their family, their spouses who have uncertainty about work. They have kids who are aging out and maybe have to leave the country when they grew up here. So it's not either or. And I think that's the thing, a myth we sort of have to dispel is everyone is contributing in important ways.
So I think, you took the next question kind of right out of my mouth, Portia, because I often feel like for technology companies, particularly a place like Microsoft that is a household name and, Workday that provides such kind of critical back office services, there's just so many misperceptions about, what you need in terms of immigration, much less the impact of the immigration policies on your workforces writ large. But Portia, every time we talk, I'm always surprised by the footprint that Microsoft has across the country, because we all just kind of equate it with Redmond, right? So I was wondering if you could kind of speak to, where your staff is geographically located. Because I don't think, I would imagine the audience doesn't realize, just the sheer kind of diversity of placement you all have.
Oh, thanks, Ali. We are, people have heard of us. We're a large global company, but we're also, we have a strong presence on the West Coast, of course, but we have employees in all 50 states. We are the largest private sector employer in North Dakota. For example, so we have a really large presence in Fargo. We have, we're in Texas, we're in North Carolina, we're expanding in Georgia, New York, of course, Virginia, actually here in the area. We're not as big as some tech companies perhaps in Virginia, but we have a large presence here as well. So we're all over the country. And we don't have a big retail presence like others do, but we also have a very diverse business. So we're a cloud provider. We provide, of course, products for businesses, but also Xbox, LinkedIn. There's sort of a very large technology family. And for meeting, for example, Dreamer colleagues and other immigrant colleagues, they're working across our business. Some of them are in retail or customer solutions. Some of them are in finance. Some of them are, I had one Dreamer colleague who trained in rocket science and he does some sort of thing, which I can't really explain, but a lot of them are really super fancy engineers too. So
Chandler, one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about is, artificial, the kind of the burgeoning industry of artificial intelligence, kind of in the context of these significant, to say the least, geopolitical debates between the US and China and other countries, but also then, how those debates underscore the dire need for a functioning legal immigration system. And, what we have found from our part is kind of we're beginning to explore kind of a different way to think about this, as opposed to kind of workforce or family only, but also immigration as a national security imperative. So I was wondering if you could kind of delve into a lot of the thinking and work that you've been doing in this space.
Sure. I'm sure I'm not any different than Microsoft in that so many of the issues that we're facing now are global in nature. So I spend quite a bit of time with my European colleague talking about EU-US tech. The Biden administration has put quite a few eggs in the EU-US bilateral. And the reason for that is we really need sort of like-minded democracies to kind of get together on some of these higher level tech regulatory and innovation ideas, kind of in the specter of gaining the higher ground over some autocratic or technocratic regimes around the globe. That's a super exciting development. It's really exciting to work on those issues. And we were really pleased to see the National Security Commission on AI last year come out with a set of recommendations that just flatly said, and by the way, if we want to hold the higher ground on some of these really important strategic technical issues, you're going to have to fix the U.S. immigration system because it's not working. And some of us, Microsoft, and we've been working in the high skill immigration trenches for a long time, and can cite the research around the benefits to employers, yada yada, and it sort of washes over folks. This new lens of not just, hey, this is a benefit to the U.S. economy, which it is, but also this is a benefit to national security, period, is really a line of argument that we think is, again, trying to get to those issues on which we can find common ground, trying to get to those issues where we can expand the waterfront of policymakers that are interested and engaged and willing to do some work. This national security immigration reform set of issues is really exciting. The work that the National Security Coalition on Immigration is launching. I've gotten a chance to work with Remco Swetsloot from Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technologies. He's doing some terrific work. We're partnering with the Center for Strategic and International Studies. There's just really a crashing wave of folks that are really starting to pay attention to this, and I think it's really exciting.
And anything kind of in that sphere that's starting to come across your screen these days, Portia?
Well, I think, first of all, absolutely the national security issues, we want to get the best and brightest from around the world. And increasingly, innovation is a global phenomenon. And we don't want to miss out on that conversation. And so many people are attracted to the U.S. to train and learn here. Why not retain those investments and keep people here? I also want to say, part of security is economic resilience. And we saw during the COVID pandemic that immigrants were so critical on the front lines in healthcare, on keeping our video conferencing going, and a lot of our colleagues have been here 5, 10, 15 years. They've been doing that, still waiting for their chance to have that legal path to permanent residence and citizenship. And it feels like, those investments they've been willing to make in our country, our economic security and continued growth, responding to the pandemic over the last couple of years, we really need to recognize that and foster that and, welcome people who are willing to make those investments in America and in the promise our country holds.
So I wanted to, in our last couple of minutes together, I wanted to kind of veer from our agreed upon set of topics and kind of ask you something. Oh, now you're getting nervous, aren't you? You're getting nervous. Wanted to ask you something a little bit more kind of personal, if you will. So both of you have worked in Washington, D.C. a long time. Portia, you were with Senator Kennedy. That's when we first met. You were working on immigration. Chandler, your role with Senator Flake. D.C. has kind of become a really, really tough town, right? Especially when it comes to something like immigration. So from your perspectives, why do you continue? And I'm kind of asking you to take your company hat off, if you will, right? What drives you when it comes to immigration? And how do you think we can regain some sense of bipartisanship in Washington, D.C.? Whoever wants to go first, since I threw that one out there cold.
It was a conversation I had with actually the folks that administer the GMAT, and it was years ago. And you never want to find out that there's problems on the bridge when the bridge collapses. You want to sort of see the cracks in the foundation ahead of time. And the folks that administer the GMAT knew where the scores were being sent all over the world. So if you took the GMAT, you could refer your scores to international schools, and they were starting to see a decline of international students sending their scores to what the U.S. has, our premier research institutions. And there have been few things that have really, there's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of talking points, but that frankly terrified me. And frankly is, there is a real threat to the U.S. not being, as Portia said, so where the best and the brightest in the world want to come. It's something that we can't take for granted. And it's something that the days that those happens, when our schools are struggling to attract that talent, by the time that happens, it's going to be hard to undo. And so I've sort of long been engaged in immigration and wanted to stay engaged in immigration, mostly to make sure that, my kids have schools to go to that are the premier institutions in the world that they don't have to leave the country to attend.
Thank you, Chandler. Portia.
Well, I wish I had an answer, Ali, about restoring bipartisanship because it's something that's been really on my mind. I think it's hard to find an answer, but some of us who've been working on immigration for a long time, it feels like a little like rolling a rock up a hill and having it roll down over us. But I draw inspiration since you mentioned Senator Kennedy. I did work for him, and I was working for him during the 06, 07, and 05 attempts. With Senator McCain's staff and actually then Congressman Flake's staff. If you haven't watched it, you should watch his 1980 concession speech at the Democratic National Convention. It's when he lost the nomination, but it's a long speech, but at the end there's this piece, and it's sometimes referred to as the "Dream Shall Never Die" speech. And he basically says, we lost today, but for all those whose hopes we have been working on, and for all those people who are still in need, like the work goes on, we have to keep doing it. As frustrating as we may find it as advocates in DC, there are millions of our fellow residents in the United States who are living this uncertainty, and we can't give up. We have to keep trying. It may seem impossible, but there's no other choice. And so we have to have that optimism. Like, actually, I've seen President Biden say this many times when he talks to Asian American immigrant groups, like, who leaves their country and everything they know behind and like comes to the United States to try to go it alone? Only someone who's a true optimist, right? And so I think we have to bring that optimism to the work we're doing every day.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think it's the perfect note to end this on. And Portia Wu with Microsoft, Chandler Morse with Workday, thank you both for your partnership and for all the work that you do. So I really, really appreciate it.